Transgender children and youth not only face the general challenges of children, but many others. They need strong advocacy. True Wilson and her parents have blazed a path for transgender rights in youth. True spoke at her BC Human Rights Tribunal hearing alleging discrimination by her school and was recently given the number 12 spot on Vancouver Magazine's Powerful 50 list for her efforts. We are happy to welcome True Wilson and her mother Michelle Wilson to share some thoughts with us today.
Hi everyone, and thank you all for being here today to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. I was 9 years old when I finally found the words to describe how I was different from the other kids around me. The word that described how I was feeling, and that word was transgender. When I came out to my parents as being trans, it was a scary and emotional time for me, because I didn't know if they would still love me. But I was amazed at how loving they were and supportive, and they did everything they could to learn more about being trans, and they supported me completely for who I was. And that alone was an incredible thing. Unfortunately, the school I was attending did not have a policy that spoke about or supported sexual orientation or gender identity. They didn't know what to do with me. My parents were trying to find their way around this new world for our family and learn about what it meant to be trans. But they had to fight with my school to support me. I was living my life at home, at dance, at basketball, as the girl I knew I truly was. But when I went to school, I had to pretend to be a boy again, and it was the worst game of dress up ever. I had to wear the boys' uniform and be called by my boys' name. In gym class, I was forced to be on the boys' team when I knew I belonged with the girls. My brother and sister were corrected in class and told that I wasn't their sister and that I was their brother, which is completely wrong. The only bathroom access the school offered was the handicap bathroom, which just told me there was something wrong with me. It was a very painful and depressing time for me. No child deserves to be treated that way. Overall, my teachers in my school did not have the resources to understand the support that I needed. They didn't know it was okay to support a trans child in their transition. They didn't know how harmful they were being. No, not harmful. Hurtful. They didn't know how hurtful they were being by not respecting my pronouns and by using my old name. They didn't know how small it made me feel and how much pain I was in. And I'm not alone. There are thousands of kids like me who don't have the support they need at their home or in their schools. There are kids that aren't allowed to use their preferred bathrooms, and so they hold their pee all day because they don't feel safe or right in the bathroom. They don't feel safe or right in the bathroom they are told to use. And that can give them chronic bladder infections. There are kids who hurt themselves because by not supporting their transition, parents and educators are telling kids that there is something wrong with them. And no child deserves that. Thank you.
When True came out to us as transgender, we were both awed by her self-awareness and afraid for her future. As parents, as I'm sure many of you are, it is our job to protect our children, to give them the space and the safety to find out who they truly are. But when that truth means that your child could be looked at as an outsider, that your child could be targeted as something other, suddenly unconditional love seems questionable. Unconditional love actually contradicts your role as protector of your child. It's a really difficult place to be. We were scared to come out to our friends and family, as we honestly didn't know, after all was said and done, who was going to be left standing. However, we were pleasantly surprised that our friends and our family members embraced True's transition, and for those who didn't quite understand it, they just said, we don't understand fully what's going on, but we're willing to learn, and we love her. And that's a really powerful thing to say to a child. So we had new optimism about finding the same support at the school that True was attending. It was a semi-private Catholic school. You guys can all start giggling now. And although many of our friends recommended that we not even bother to try with our faith-based school, we had our own faith in the friends that we had there and the teachers that we knew there that did support us. However, within seconds of sitting down with the principal of the school at our first meeting, we were handed a letter from the school's lawyer stating that they could not support our child, who they insisted on calling our son, and that they required additional medical opinions from other doctors in the field to further validate the already existing documentation that we had from our own psychologist. We had spent months trying to figure out who True was, and it wasn't enough. It was heartbreaking, to say the least. And after the meeting, I literally sat in the parking lot of the Save On Foods, going to pick up milk, and sobbed. And sobbed and sobbed as I saw firsthand the harsh reality of the world that our child lived in. A world where her rights were not defined and where she was not respected. So, after that initial meeting, we realized that we couldn't fight without our own counsel. And so we were fortunate enough to be given the name of someone who I'm sure you all know very well, Miss Barbara Findlay. And with Barbara's help, we attempted to appease the school in the hopes that meeting their demands, it would allow True to be herself and still be a part of the community that we had found there, both for her and our other children and for our family. We wanted her to continue to be surrounded by those who loved and accepted her. However, after 2 months of back and forth with the school's lawyers, our family decided that the trauma and the dual existence that she was living, it just couldn't be tolerated anymore. It was too much for her. And I know that in lawyers' terms, 2 months is not a long time. But as the judge was saying earlier, it's a long time in the life of a child. It's a really large percentage of her life in a time of her life where she's really trying to find herself. So we pulled our children out of the school. We luckily found support at a local school. And 4 months later, we filed a human rights complaint against the Catholic Independent Schools of Vancouver Archdiocese because we didn't want any other child to go through this again. Our intent was never to go back to the school, but we didn't want any other kids to have to go through what True went through. So as you all well know, change takes time, especially when it involves lawyers. I love you. You guys do great work. But it's a process. So after multiple mediations with the BC Human Rights Tribunal, we were able to come to a settlement 2 years later, which most importantly resulted in the first ever gender identity affirming policy that we know of in North America, if not the world. It's the first of its kind that acknowledges gender identity and expression for children, that allows an opportunity for children to be supported in their schools, given the right situation. It is by no means a perfect policy. I'm sure every one of you in this room could find the wrong loopholes to go against a child, but in the right hands, it can mean the difference for a child. It was also the start of our continued work of keeping the ball moving forward with trans rights, especially for kids. We, as a family, talk one-on-one with other families who are struggling, who are starting their own journey. We speak to teachers who are learning in the newly implemented SOGI policies in all BC schools. I think that that's pretty amazing. And we were proud to be in Victoria when the BC Human Rights Act was recently amended to include gender identity and expression. We hope to see the same amendment to the Canadian Human Rights Act and Criminal Code. If any of you have any means of affecting that, please make your voices heard. In the hopes that it will make it definitively clear that all children, including trans kids, get the rights that they deserve. We'd like to say a special thank you to Barbara. I don't think she was able to make it, but for all of her work and support and her ongoing commitment to the rights of trans youth and persons everywhere. And I hope that each of you get the opportunity to help a child find the voice that they didn't know they had. It is indeed a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, True and Michelle, and the rest of your family who are there. Thank you so much for coming